The couple's daughter was found dead on a carnival cruise. 8 years later, they saw her married with children. The call came at 4:23 a.m. The voice on the other end of the line sounded mechanical, trained for such moments, but still tense. Sabine Fisher woke up to the vibration of her cell phone, which was lying on the nightstand next to the narrow bed in the ship's cabin. Her husband Thomas was still asleep, his breathing steady in rhythm with the engines that were propelling the ship through the night, somewhere deep below them. "Mrs. Fisher? This is Captain Romano of the MSC Fantasia. There is a situation that requires your immediate attention. Can you please come to the security center on deck 4 immediately?" Sabine's heart began to race, even before her mind had fully processed the words. She knew that tone. In her work as a nurse, she had used it often enough herself when she had to deliver bad news to relatives. That controlled, overly calm tone that actually screamed, "Something terrible has happened." "What's going on? Is it Lena?" A pause. Too long. "Please come to the security center. We'll discuss everything there." Thomas was already awake, startled by Sabine's sudden movement. "What happened?" "It's about Lena." They got dressed hastily and ran through the empty corridors of the ship. It was February 2015, in the middle of the carnival season, and the MSC Fantasia was on a 10-day Mediterranean cruise. Barcelona, Marseille, Genoa, Rome. A family trip that was supposed to put everything back on track. The last few months had been difficult. Lena had changed, becoming quieter and more withdrawn. At 17, she was at that difficult age when daughters distance themselves from their parents and search for their own identity. Sabine and Thomas had thought this trip might help. Time as a family, no distractions, just the three of them. The security center was a small, windowless room full of monitors and flashing lights. Captain Romano, a man in his late 50s with grey hair and deep wrinkles around his eyes, was waiting for them. Next to him stood the security chief, a younger man in uniform holding a notepad in his hands. "Mr. and Mrs. Fisher, please take a seat." "Where is our daughter?" Thomas's voice was firm, but Sabine could hear the panic underneath. The captain took a deep breath. "Lena was reported missing at 3:47 this morning. A routine check of the cabins revealed that she was not in her bed. We immediately began a search." "What do you mean, missing? She must be somewhere on the ship." "We are currently searching all decks, all public areas, all cabin corridors. My team has already spoken to other passengers." He hesitated. At 4:05 a.m., a crew member found Lena's cell phone on deck 7 near the railing. The words hit Sabine like a physical blow. Deck 7, the railing, the sea. "No." Her voice was a whisper. "No, no, no. We've alerted the Coast Guard. A search plane is already in the air. But you have to understand, Miss Fisher, we're in the middle of the Mediterranean. It's nighttime. The water temperature is about 54 degrees. Thomas stood up, his hands clenched into fists. "Are you telling us that our daughter has gone overboard?" "We don't know what happened yet. There are no witnesses. The surveillance cameras on deck 7 have a blind spot right where her cell phone was found." "Then keep looking. She must be on the ship. Maybe she fell, got hurt, is unconscious somewhere." But even as Thomas spoke, Sabine already knew. She had seen it in the captain's eyes, in the way the security chief looked away. They had already given up. To them, Lena was already dead. The next few hours passed in a nightmare of interrogations and searches. Sabine and Thomas were questioned separately. The same questions over and over again. When had they last seen their daughter? What had her mood been like? Had she had any problems? Depression? Suicidal thoughts? "No," Sabine insisted again and again. "Lena wasn't suicidal. She had plans. She wanted to study art history after graduating from high school. She had friends, a life." But did she really? Sabine began to doubt her own words. In recent months, Lena had been so distant. She had withdrawn to her room for hours on end, hardly speaking to them. At dinner, she stared at her cell phone or muttered one-word answers to their questions. Sabine had dismissed it as normal teenage rebellion. But what if it had been more than that? What if their daughter had been suffering and they hadn't noticed? Thomas was asked if there had been any conflicts in the family. "Of course there were conflicts," he said wearily. "She's 17. We argue about her curfew, her grades, her boyfriend." "She has a boyfriend?" "Had. They broke up 2 months ago. Lena didn't talk about it much, but I think she suffered because of it." This information was carefully noted, a possible explanation, heartbreak, teenage angst, a moment of despair on a dark deck in the middle of the night. But Sabine refused to believe it. "My daughter would never kill herself. Never." At 11:30 a.m., the official announcement was made. "Dear passengers, we ask for your attention. In the early hours of the morning, a passenger was reported missing. Despite an intensive search, she has not yet been found. We ask all passengers who observed anything unusual last night to report to the security center." The ship turned into a rumor mill. Passengers whispered in groups, speculating about what might have happened. Some claimed to have heard screaming. Others said they had seen a girl crying. The stories contradicted each other, changing with each retelling. Sabine and Thomas sat in their cabin, unable to move, unable to think. Lena's cabin was right next door. The door was open, and Sabine could see her bed, the covers thrown back as if Lena had just gotten up to go to the bathroom. Her things were scattered everywhere, clothes over a chair, books on the nightstand, her camera on the desk. Sabine entered and picked up the camera. Lena loved photography. She had received the camera for her 16th birthday and had taken hundreds of pictures since then. Sabine turned it on and scrolled through the latest shots. Pictures of the sea, the sunset, other passengers. And then one of the last photos. Lena herself. A selfie taken on deck 7. She was smiling, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Behind her, slightly out of focus, Sabine could make out a male silhouette. "Thomas, look at this." Thomas came closer and took the camera. "Who is that?" "I don't know, but we have to show it to security." The man in the photo could not be identified. The image was too blurry, too dark. Ship security promised to check all passenger lists, but there were over 3,000 people on board. It could be anyone, or no one. Maybe it was just a random passenger in the background, insignificant. At 4 p.m., the ship made an unannounced stop in Palma de Mallorca. The Spanish police came on board. The cabins were sealed. Evidence was collected, but there was no evidence. No blood, no signs of a struggle, no suicide notes. Just an abandoned bed and a cell phone on a railing. The Coast Guard continued the search, but after 12 hours in 12-degree water, no one survived. Everyone knew that. At 8 p.m., the search was officially called off. "I'm sorry," Captain Romano said in a heavy voice. "Without a body, we can't make a definitive statement, but under these circumstances, we must assume that your daughter drowned." Drowned. The word hung in the air like a black cloud. Sabine shook her head again and again. "No, you'll keep searching. You have to keep searching. Miss Fisher, I understand that this is incredibly difficult for you, but you don't understand anything." Sabine's voice broke. "You don't know my daughter. You don't know who she is. You can't just stop searching." But they had already given up. The decision had been made. Case closed. The next day, the MSC Fantasia docked in Barcelona. Most of the passengers continued their journey, glad to escape the drama. Sabine and Thomas flew home to Munich empty-handed. No daughter, no body, no answers. Just Lena's camera, her clothes, her books. Objects that were suddenly more precious than gold, because they were all that remained of her. Sabine could hardly remember the following weeks. They existed in a bubble of pain and disbelief. The German police took over the investigation, but there was nothing to investigate. The Spanish authorities had already classified the case as an accident or possible suicide. No evidence of foul play. Case closed. The funeral took place 3 weeks later, an empty coffin at the Waldfriedhof cemetery in the south of Munich. Over 200 people came. Classmates, teachers, neighbors, relatives. They all cried for a girl they knew, or thought they knew. Sabine stood at the grave and couldn't cry. She felt nothing. Her body was there, but her mind was somewhere else. Perhaps still on that ship, still searching for her daughter. Thomas held her hand so tightly that it hurt, but the pain was welcome. It was the only thing she could still feel. The pastor spoke about Lena's short life, about her passion for art, about her radiant smile. But Sabine wasn't listening. She stared at the coffin, that shiny wood with the silver handles, and thought, there's nothing in there, only emptiness, just like inside me. After the funeral, life had to go on, even though Sabine didn't know how. She returned to work, to the hospital where she had been working for over 20 years, but she couldn't do it. On the 3rd day, she collapsed during a shift. A patient, 16 years old, with a broken arm, the same age as Lena. Sabine looked at her and couldn't move. Her colleague found her in the supply room, curled up on the floor, sobbing, sick leave, indefinite time off. Thomas tried to keep working, to hold on to his engineering company, but the numbers on his screen no longer made sense. Nothing made sense. Their lives had imploded, and all they could do was watch. One night, 3 months after Lena's death, Thomas found Sabine in the bathroom. She had cut her wrists, not deep enough to kill herself, but deep enough to show how desperate she was. Thomas called an ambulance. Sabine was admitted to the psychiatric ward. 72 hours of observation, antidepressants, talk therapy. I just want to be with my daughter, she kept saying. I just want to be with her. The therapist, an older woman with a gentle voice, tried to help her find a way forward. The pain will never go away completely, Sabine, but it will become bearable. You have to learn to live with it. But how do you learn to live with pain that has no explanation? How do you accept the death of a child when there is no body, no evidence, no certainty? Sabine clung to hope, as irrational as it was. Maybe Lena had survived. Maybe she had somehow swum ashore. Maybe she had lost her memory and was wandering around somewhere in Spain, not knowing who she was. She hired a private investigator, a retired police officer named Hartmann. He was expensive, but Sabine didn't care. She gave him everything: photos, phone records, the names of Lena's friends, the ship's passenger list. Hartmann worked on the case for 6 months. He found nothing. No trace, no clues, nothing. Lena had disappeared as if she had never existed. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Fisher," he said at their last meeting. "Sometimes there are just no answers." Sabine didn't fire him. She even thanked him. But that night she cried until she had no more tears left. The marriage began to crumble. Sabine and Thomas grieved differently. Thomas tried to remain practical, to look ahead. Sabine couldn't. She spent hours in Lena's room, surrounded by her things, breathing in the faint scent of her perfume that still clung to her clothes. Thomas asked her to clear out the room. "We have to move on, Sabine. We can't live in the past forever." She wasn't just the past. She was our daughter. "I know that. Do you think I don't miss her every damn day?" But Thomas didn't cry, at least not where Sabine could see him. He swallowed his pain, buried it under work and routine. Sabine couldn't do that. Her pain was a living, breathing thing that filled every room, every silence. They went to couples therapy. The therapist talked about grieving together, about communication, about the need to be there for each other. But how could they be there for each other when each of them could barely exist for themselves? There were good days, Days when Sabine could wake up without immediately thinking of Lena. Days when she could smile when someone told a joke. But those days were rare, and they felt like betrayal. How could she be happy when her daughter was dead? Years passed, one after another. Sabine learned to function. She returned to work, part-time. She met up with friends again, albeit rarely. She celebrated Christmas, birthdays, Easter. Outwardly, she looked like someone who had recovered. Inside, she was a house with broken windows, with the wind whistling through all the cracks. Lena's room remained unchanged. Sabine cleaned it once a week, dusted the shelves, tidied the books. As if Lena were only gone for a moment and would return at any moment. Thomas finally accepted it. He no longer fought against Sabine's ritual. Perhaps he understood that some wounds never heal, but only scar over. 8 years passed in this way. 8 years of survival, not of living. 8 years in which Sabine and Thomas learned to coexist with the pain, like an unwanted roommate they couldn't get rid of. And then, in the spring of 2023, they decided to take another trip. Not out of joy, but out of necessity. Their therapist had suggested creating new memories, visiting places that were not connected to Lena. You have to learn to live again, not just exist. They chose Andalusia, sun, history, culture. Everything far away from Munich, far away from that ship, that sea. They couldn't have known that this trip would change everything, that what they would see in a small street in Malaga would challenge their entire lives, their entire grief, their entire reality. Sometimes the truth finds you when you've stopped looking for it. Malaga welcomed them with glistening sunlight and the scent of orange blossoms. It was the end of April 2023, and the city was pulsating with life. Tourists strolled through the narrow streets of the old town. Street musicians played flamenco on every corner, and the terraces of the cafes were crowded with people enjoying the good weather. Sabine and Thomas were sitting in a small restaurant near the cathedral. They had just had lunch, pescado frito and gazpacho, and were now drinking coffee while watching the passers-by. It was their 3rd day in Andalusia, and for the first time in years, Sabine felt something like peace. The sun warmed her face, the food had been good, and the unfamiliar surroundings offered a welcome distraction from the endless loops of thoughts that dominated her life in Munich. "Shall we visit the Picasso Museum?" Thomas asked, studying the city map on his cell phone. "It's only 10 minutes from here." Sabine nodded. "Why not?" They paid and strolled through the winding alleys. The architecture here was different from Germany, Moorish influenced with white houses and colourful tiles. Bougainvillea climbed up the walls, and snippets of conversation and the clattering of dishes drifted out of open windows. They turned into a narrower alley, less touristy, quieter. Here were small shops, a greengrocer, a bakery, a shop selling handmade ceramics. Sabine stopped in front of the ceramics shop, admiring the colourful plates in the window, and then she saw her. Across the street, about 20 meters away, a young woman was standing in front of a supermarket. She was holding the hand of a little boy, maybe 4 years old. Next to her was a stroller with a baby sleeping in it. The woman laughed at something the boy had said, and Sabine could see her profile. The world stopped spinning. The face, the nose, the way she tilted her head when she laughed, the long brown hair blowing in the wind. Sabine knew that face. She had seen it 1,000 times in photos, in dreams, in every quiet minute of the last 8 years. Thomas. Her voice was a whisper. "Thomas, look." "What?" He followed her gaze. "What am I supposed to see?" "The woman. With the children." Thomas looked more closely. Sabine felt him freeze beside her. "That's not possible," he murmured. The young woman bent down to give the child something from her shopping bag. At that moment, she turned slightly more in her direction, and Sabine could see her more clearly. The birthmark on her neck, small, crescent-shaped, just below her left ear. The same birthmark Lena had had. The same birthmark Sabine had kissed countless times when Lena was a baby. "Lena," Sabine whispered. The woman laughed again, lifted the boy up, and put him in the shopping cart. She seemed happy, relaxed, completely absorbed in her own world. A young mother shopping with her children, nothing unusual, except that she had the face of a dead woman. "Sabine, that can't be." Thomas's voice trembled. "That's not Lena." But Sabine wasn't listening to him. She was already moving, crossing the street, her legs carrying her as if by themselves. Her heart was pounding so loudly that she couldn't hear anything else. "Excuse me," she said in German, then haltingly in Spanish. "Pardon." The young woman turned around. Her eyes, brown like amber, met Sabine's. For a brief moment, no longer than a heartbeat, Sabine recognized something in that look. Shock, panic, recognition. Then it was gone, replaced by polite confusion. "Sí, puedo ayudarle?" Sabine stared at her, searching for words. "Lena?" The woman frowned. "Lo siento, no entiendo. I don't speak German." "Lena Fischer, is that you?" "No, you're mistaken. My name is Elena, Elena Romero." The voice. It was Lena's voice, perhaps a little deeper with a Spanish accent, but the melody was the same. Thomas was now next to Sabine, his hand on her arm. "Excuse me," he said to the woman. "You look very similar to someone we knew." "That happens sometimes." The woman smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "If you'll excuse me, I have to—" "The birthmark," Sabine interrupted, "on your neck. My daughter had the exact same birthmark, in the exact same place." The woman instinctively touched her neck, covering the birthmark with her hand. "Many people have birthmarks. Not like this one. Not in this place." A man stepped out of the supermarket, a shopping bag in his hand. He was in his late 30s, heavily built, with dark hair and 3-day stubble. When he saw the scene, the tension in the woman's posture, his gaze became suspicious. "Elena? Todo bien? Sí. These people just thought they knew me." The man stepped closer, standing protectively beside the woman. "Who are you?" "We're tourists from Germany," Thomas said quickly. "We just thought my wife thought we should go, Sabine." But Sabine couldn't move. She stared at the young woman, searching for more evidence, more clues. The face was older, the features more mature, but it was the same face. She was sure as she had ever been about anything. "Please," she whispered, "if you are our daughter." "I am not your daughter." The woman's voice was firmer now, colder. "You are mistaken. Please leave us alone." The man put his arm around the woman's shoulder and led her away. They pushed the stroller down the street, the little boy toddling alongside them. Sabine watched them go, her legs seemingly rooted to the ground. Thomas gently pulled her aside. "Sabine, come on. Let's go back to the hotel." She let him lead her, but her head kept turning back, searching for the woman in the crowd. She had disappeared. In the hotel room, Sabine sat on the bed, shivering even though it was warm. Thomas brought her a glass of water. "It was her," Sabine said. "I know you think I'm crazy, but it was Lena." "Sabine, Lena is dead. She has been for 8 years. There was never a body. Never. She fell into the sea. At these temperatures, what if she didn't fall? What if she left?" Thomas sat down next to her. "Why would she do that? Why would our 17-year-old daughter fake her death?" Sabine had no answer to that, but she had seen that woman's face. She had recognized the panic in her eyes. It hadn't just been a coincidence. Sabine didn't sleep that night. She lay awake in the darkness of the hotel room, staring at the ceiling, seeing that face over and over again. The way the woman had smiled, the panic in her eyes when she recognized Sabine, because she had recognized her. Sabine was convinced of that. Thomas snored quietly beside her. How could he sleep after what they had seen? But Thomas had always had this ability to lock away things that were too painful to confront. After Lena's death, he had mourned, of course, but then he had opened a drawer in his mind, put the pain inside, and closed the drawer again. Sabine envied him for that. When the first rays of sunlight fell through the curtains, she got up. She showered, got dressed, and sat down on the balcony with her laptop. Malaga was waking up below her. Street vendors were setting up their stalls. Delivery trucks were bringing fresh bread to the bakeries. Sabine opened Google and typed Elena Romero Malaga. Thousands of results. The name was too common. She tried Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, dozens of profiles of women named Elena Romero in Spain. She scrolled through faces looking for the right one. Thomas woke up around 8 o'clock and found her still at her laptop. "Sabine, what are you doing?" "I'm looking for her." He sighed and sat down next to her. "And what are you going to do when you find her? Harass a stranger because she happens to look like our dead daughter?" "She doesn't just look like her. She is her." "That's impossible." "Is it?" Sabine turned to him. "Think about it, Thomas. There was never a body, never any evidence of what really happened. They stopped searching after 12 hours. Because no one survives 12 hours in such cold water." "But what if she was never in the water?" Thomas rubbed his face. "Why would our daughter fake her own death? It doesn't make sense." "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." They spent the day wandering around Malaga. Officially, they visited the sites, the Alcazaba, the Moorish fortress, the botanical garden. Unofficially, Sabine scanned every face in the crowd, hoping to see the woman again. On the second day, they returned to the street where they had met the woman. Sabine went into the supermarket, bought water she didn't need, and asked the cashier, in broken Spanish, "Do you know a woman named Elena, young, with 2 small children?" The cashier shrugged. "Many women come here to shop." Sabine showed her a photo of Lena on her cell phone, the last one taken before the cruise. "She looks like this." The cashier looked at the photo and shook her head. "Lo siento, no." On the afternoon of the 3rd day, as they were driving through a residential area outside the city centre, Thomas saw the stroller. "Sabine, over there." A woman was pushing a blue stroller along the sidewalk, a little boy skipping alongside her. The same woman, the same children. "Slow down," Sabine whispered. Thomas slowed down the rental car. They followed the woman at a distance of about 50 meters. The street was quiet, lined with low-rise houses with small gardens. The woman turned into a side street, and Thomas parked the car. "What are we doing here?" he asked. "We're just watching." They got out and followed on foot. The alley ended at a small square with a playground in the middle. The woman let go of the boy's hand and he ran to the jungle gym. She sat down on a bench, rocking the baby in the stroller. Sabine and Thomas stood at the edge of the square, half hidden behind a parked delivery van. From here, they could see the woman clearly. In the sunlight, without the hustle and bustle of the street, the resemblance was even more striking. "My God," Thomas murmured. "She really could be—" "It is her," Sabine interrupted. "Look at the way she sits, the way she tilts her head to the side. That's Lena's gesture." A man appeared, the same one from the supermarket. He was carrying 2 coffee cups and gave one to the woman. She smiled at him, and he sat down next to her. They looked like a perfectly normal couple, enjoying a sunny afternoon with their children. "Who is this man?" Thomas asked. "I don't know, but I'll find out." They stayed for an hour, watching. The boy played, the baby woke up and was fed. The couple talked, laughed occasionally. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. And yet everything felt wrong. When the family finally left, Sabine and Thomas followed them again, this time to a small house at the end of a quiet street. White facade, blue shutters, a tiny front yard with geraniums. The couple went inside, the door closed behind them. Now we know where she lives, said Sabine. Thomas looked at her worriedly. What now? Do we knock on the door? Confront them? Not yet. First we need evidence. In the days that followed, a pattern emerged. Every morning, the man left the house around 8 o'clock, driving away in an old seat. The woman stayed at home with the children, went shopping around 10 o'clock, usually to the same supermarket, sometimes to the market in the city centre. In the afternoons, she often went to the playground. Sabine photographed everything. The woman, the house, the car, the man. She collected evidence like a detective in a bad movie. Thomas protested at first, talking about privacy and stalking, but even he could no longer deny the resemblance. The more time they spent observing this woman, the more details they recognized. The way she ran her fingers through her hair, how she chewed on her lower lip when she was thinking. Small gestures that they had both seen Lena do thousands of times. Maybe we should call the police, Thomas suggested, and tell them what? That we're stalking a woman because she looks like our dead daughter? They'd laugh at us. We could request DNA tests. For that, we'd need her cooperation, or a court order, and for that, we'd need evidence, which we don't have. They were stuck, caught between certainty and helplessness. On the 7th day of their observation, something happened. The woman was shopping alone, without the children. Sabine followed her into the supermarket, stayed close to her, pretended to examine tomatoes, while the woman was choosing bread. Suddenly, the woman's phone rang. She fumbled it out of her bag, looked at the display, and Sabine could see a name. Mama. The woman didn't answer. She stared at the phone, and an expression of pain, longing, guilt flitted across her face. Then she rejected the call and put the phone back in her bag. Sabine's heart was racing. Mom. This woman had a mother who called her. But if she was Lena, then Sabine was her mother. Who was this other woman? She had to know. She had to find out the truth, no matter what it took. On the 8th day, Sabine decided she had observed enough. She had to act, had to get the truth out of this woman before she and Thomas had to fly back to Germany. Their vacation was coming to an end. I'm going to talk to her today, she announced at breakfast. Thomas looked up from his coffee. Sabine, I don't know if that's a good idea. Do you have a better suggestion? He was silent. They both knew they had no other options. Around 10 o'clock, they positioned themselves near the house. Sabine waited until the woman came out with the children, as she did every day. But this time, instead of following her, Sabine walked straight up to her. Elena, please, I need to talk to you. The woman froze. The boy held her hand tighter. You again. I told you you're mistaking me for someone else. I'm not mistaking you for someone else. Sabine's voice trembled. I've been watching you for a week. Every gesture, every movement. You are my daughter. The woman looked around, as if searching for an escape route. You're crazy. I'm calling the police. Do that, please. Then we can do a DNA test and settle this once and for all. Silence. The woman bit her lower lip, just like Lena always did when she was nervous. I don't know what you're talking about. The birthmark on your neck. My daughter had the exact same one when she was a baby. I kissed it 1,000 times. Sabine's voice broke. The way you tilt your head when you laugh. The way you chew your lip. These aren't just similarities. This is you. Mama, who is this woman? The boy asked fearfully. The woman knelt down next to him. No one, sweetheart. Go inside quickly and get Papa, okay? The boy ran into the house. Thomas stepped closer to Sabine. Listen, he said calmly, we just want to know the truth. If you're not our daughter, fine. We'll apologize and leave. But if you are, I'm not. Then prove it. A DNA test only takes seconds. The man came running out of the house, the boy by his hand. What the hell is going on here? These people claim I'm their daughter, said the woman, her voice trembling. We told you to leave us alone. The man stood protectively in front of her. "Get out of here, or I'll call the police." "Please," Sabine pleaded. "I lost my daughter 8 years ago, on a cruise ship in the Mediterranean. Her name was Lena Fisher. She was 17 years old." Tears ran down her cheeks. "If you are my daughter, if you are still alive, then you have to tell me. For 8 years I believed you were dead. 8 years." Something changed in the woman's face. The mask began to crumble. Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Elena, no," the man warned, but the woman shook her head. "You have a right to know." She looked Sabine straight in the eyes. "I'm not Elena Romero. My name is Lena Fisher, and you are my mother." The world tilted. Sabine heard a sound, half sob, half scream, and only seconds later realized it was coming from herself. Her legs gave way and Thomas had to support her. "You're alive," Sabine managed to say. "You're alive. All these years." I know what I did." Lena's face was covered in tears. "I was young and stupid and thought I had no other choice." "No other choice but what? To fake your own death? To make us believe you were dead for 8 years? The man put his hand on Lena's shoulder. "Maybe we should discuss this inside, not here on the street." Sabine wanted to scream, wanted to shake her daughter, wanted answers to the 1,000 questions racing through her mind. But Thomas nodded. "Yes, let's go inside." The interior of the house was modest but cozy. Toys were scattered around the living room. Children's drawings hung on the walls. A completely normal family life. They sat down, an unbearable tension in the room. Lena held the boy on her lap. The baby slept in the stroller. The man stood in the doorway watching everything with suspicious eyes. "Explain it to me," Sabine said in a choked voice. "Explain to me how my 17-year-old daughter decides to disappear from a cruise ship and let her parents believe she's dead for 8 years. Lena swallowed hard. "There was someone on the ship, someone I knew before. He helped me disappear." "Why? Why on earth would you do such a thing?" Lena's gaze fell on the man in the doorway. "Because I was pregnant." Silence. The word hung in the room like a bomb that hadn't yet exploded. "Pregnant," Sabine repeated tonelessly. "You were 17. "I know." Lena's voice was little more than a whisper. "I was so afraid to tell you." Thomas leaned forward, his face pale. "Afraid of what?" "We were your parents. We would have helped you. You would have forced me to have an abortion, or give the baby up for adoption." Lena wiped away her tears. "You had so many plans for me. College, a career. A baby didn't fit into that." "That's not true," Sabine protested. "We would have found a way." "Really?" Lena's voice hardened. "You cried when I told you I wanted to study art instead of medicine. You said I was wasting my potential. What would you have said if I'd been pregnant at 17? Sabine opened her mouth, then closed it again. She couldn't deny that Lena had a point. She had been strict, had had high expectations, but that didn't justify. "And the father?" Thomas looked at the man in the doorway. "Was it you?" The man nodded. "My name is Miguel. We met in Barcelona a year before the cruise. Lena was there on a student exchange. So you're the reason our daughter faked her death." "I gave her a choice she wouldn't otherwise have had," Miguel said calmly. "I was working on the MSc Fantasia at the time, as a crew member. When Lena told me she was pregnant and wanted to keep the baby, I helped her disappear." "Helped?" Sabine's voice became shrill. "You helped a minor falsify her identity. That's child abduction." "I wasn't a minor," Lena objected. "I was 17, old enough to make my own decisions." "You were a child." Sabine jumped up, her hands trembling. "A frightened, confused child who made a huge mistake. And this man," she pointed at Miguel, "helped you destroy your life." "He didn't ruin my life. He saved it." Lena stood up too, the boy sliding off her lap. I know what I did to you. Do you think I don't think about it every day? But I was so scared. Scared of your disappointment. Scared of the future. Scared that you would take the baby away from me. We would never have. Yes, you would have. Lena's voice broke. In your eyes, I was always the perfect child. Good grades, no problems, always well behaved. And then I was supposed to tell you that I was 17 and pregnant by a man 10 years older than me. You would have freaked out. Sabine wanted to argue, but deep down she knew Lena was right. She would have freaked out. She would probably have forced Lena to have an abortion or given the baby up for adoption, not out of malice, but out of concern for Lena's future. So you decided to just let us die? For 8 years? Thomas's voice was full of pain. Do you know what those 8 years did to your mother? She tried to kill herself twice. Lena froze. What? Twice, Thomas repeated, because the pain of losing you was too great. I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. You were too busy building your new life. Sabine could hear the bitterness in her own voice. Hours passed in that living room. Tears, accusations, explanations. Lena told them everything, how Miguel had gotten her fake papers in Barcelona, how she had disappeared from the ship that night, hidden in a lifeboat, how she came to Malaga and started a new life. I wanted to call you, Lena sobbed, so many times, but the more time passed, the more impossible it became. Sabine sat there, numb with pain and relief. Her daughter was alive. That was all that mattered, right? But the wound of the last 8 years would never heal completely. What now? Thomas finally asked. Sabine looked at her daughter, then at the children, her grandchildren. She didn't know them. She had missed 8 years. I don't know, she whispered. All I know is that I can't lose you again. Lena cried. Mom, I'm so sorry. Me too. They hugged, for the first time in 8 years. No forgiveness, not yet. But maybe, someday, a new beginning. Outside, the sun was setting over Malaga, a family, destroyed and reborn. The wounds would remain, but so would the love. Some stories don't have a happy ending, just another chapter.